The ship of dreams dramatically breaking apart is probably one of the biggest aspects that makes the sinking of the Titanic so gripping. From the way that the steel hull bends, to the structures collapsing, porthole rings darting off into midair, the ship plunging back into the water on top of passengers, and even Jack hitting Rose on the nose. The 1997 blockbuster by James Cameron gives a pretty spectacular depiction of the theory that has dominated in recent years. However, new evidence reveals that this may never have happened. So how do you explain the very separate bow and stern sections of the ship on the ocean floor? On the 1st of September 1985, the wreck of the unsinkable ship was finally discovered and many questions have been answered. Before then, it was generally accepted that she had gone down in one piece, despite some survivors claiming that she had broken in half at the surface. But finding the ship separated indeed has had investigators listing towards the splitting theory for almost 38 years. Now, over the past 4 of those 38 years, a high-tech expedition called the Titanic Mapping Project has set out to get the most detailed layout of the entire wreck site ever by using underwater drones to scan every inch of the debris field. These drones fire sonar signals onto the area beneath it to measure variations in height down to the smallest detail. Investigators also sent down remote-controlled subs to capture new photo and video footage of the wreck site. After stitching all of the data and images together, a first ever full view of the wreck of the Titanic sheds even more light on many aspects of how and why the ship sank. Consequently, this one how factor, and also wow factor, is now being challenged. The spectacular splitting apart of the Titanic as the stern section was rising out of the water is now buckling under the pressure of the story that the debris field is telling, potentially plunging the occurrence back down to only the testimony of a handful of survivors. Investigator Bill Lang points out that if the 269-meter-long Titanic had broken in half at the surface, the debris would have created a much larger scatter pattern, falling almost 4 kilometers to the ocean floor. Therefore, considering how dense the debris field is and how relatively small the scatter area is, it would be more plausible to assume that the ship had only broken apart closer to the bottom of the sea instead of at the surface. This is in line with the survivors recalling no breakup. Now, the investigators of the Titanic Mapping Project are fairly confident in their new theory, claiming that it is beyond doubt that the Titanic did not break apart at the surface. But this new evidence does not yet seem sufficient enough to hold up against the other details and scenarios at play. For example, why is the stern section so much more disintegrated than the bow if it were only separated for a short while? If survivors say that the ship was fully lit when she disappeared beneath the waves, how come there's any argument over the splitting of the ship? Even if the ship's power went out before the breakup on that pitch-black, moonless night, can such a massive event truly go unnoticed? Or was the breakup just not as violent? Why would the ship break apart underwater if the strain of the stern rising up into the air did not cause the superstructure to give way? And lastly, could the 13-mile distance between the Titanic's distress coordinates versus the wreck's coordinates be of any significance? I don't know. So many questions, still not enough answers. I sometimes wonder if they shouldn't just replicate the Titanic as she had been built back then and actually sink the ship again, so as to see how she would behave, because that way we would know for sure. Would you like to see an empty Titanic sink again in real life? What if it doesn't break in two? Would it take away from your fascination with the story? Would you still be captivated by the worst maritime disaster ever? Share with us in the comments down below, and until we meet again, May the wind be always at your back. Bon voyage.